What's up, guys? Wow, that's a bright light. Thanks for auto adjusting there, Mr. Camera. What's going on, guys? Cody from MotorcycleMD. Welcome to another episode of Ask MD Live Q&A. Super pumped to start this. As long as I get my lighting right. Just bought this thing and hopefully it works okay, not make me like a ghost. But got some awesome questions this week. For your first time viewers, every Monday at 8:30 I do a live Q&A. Exactly what the description says. And I get lots of emails all throughout the week and I try to find and go through them and talk with you guys live about them. So I read them the first time and I just go for it off the side of my hip. So if you have a question, feel free to go over to MotorcycleMD.com. And I have a live Q&A, or I have an Ask MD drop down with a live Q&A little sheet that you can just fill out, and it's super simple and it helps me kind of organize it better, I guess. But my name is Cody Richards over here in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm a professional Honda technician and I've been doing it for about 8 years. I'm certified through Honda, silver level currently. In January, I'm going to Georgia to do more training on the more training. So hopefully bring my cert up more. So again, I'll probably go around 4 or 5 questions. If you have a question and we answer, and we talked about it last week, and there was like more to it or something like that. If I don't talk about it here, I'll get back to you, probably through email or something like that. But at the end of it, I'll leave the floor open a little bit for you guys to ask, random stuff, and we'll talk about motorcycles. Sorry if you hear a loud vent. It's the heater. We have an oil burner, and it's loud. But man, I feel like I look like a ghost. So it's crazy. But we will get started here in a second. As soon as I figure out all this stuff, and I'm gonna pull it up my YouTube channel on the computer. That way I can see comments, because I can't see them on my phone. So I hope you guys are having a great week. I've been like super busy watching Stranger Things, so I'm pumped to get home and watch some more of it. Oh man, the life I live. But I'm sure you guys would rather be watching that show. I mean, honestly, if you've seen it, then you already know. But there it goes. It got quiet for me. So we will go through 5 questions I pulled out. I have more. If I don't get to it this week, I'm sorry, but I'll get to it next week. I mean, every Monday. I don't get to it this week, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'll get to it next week. Don't need to hear myself. So let's get rolling. All right, let's see. We got some, man, this totally, I'm gonna move my computer. It's gonna shake the camera like crazy, but I don't want that to happen every time I go to look at my computer. So I'm here, but I'm here. Okay, I'm here and here. So let's see. Wait, it's on now. What's going on, Mitch? I look tired. It's probably because it's lighting, dude. It's like I'm trying to figure out how to use it, and obviously I don't know how to use it. Maybe if I bring it back some. This is all live, you know what I'm saying? It's unedited. Y'all get the rawness. Oh, MotorcycleMD T-shirts available for purchase on the website. Go to the support MD. They're awesome. They got a cool logo on the back. Sweet, right? And they're like super soft. It's not cheap, gilded trash. You know what I'm saying? They're like actually worth wearing. Tan much? No, I don't tan much, dude. I don't. The sun and I are not friends. And I'm also inside of a shop 365 days out of the year. Alright, so we'll get into it. Jay Quizno says, got one of your shirts, wearing it now like a boss. You didn't like soft and comfortable as hell. You didn't like? Huh? I do like it. Thanks for wearing my shirt, man. I do like it. They are super soft. I love them. Alright, so the first question comes from Raymond in Pennsylvania. He's got an 87 Honda 1100 Shadow Ace. I got a couple of 1100 questions this week. So he's got some pipes on it, Canon air filter. But his question is pertaining to his brakes. He says, rear brake, when bike sits for a month or two, the brakes act like they're getting air in them, and there's no pedal. So I pump it up several times and they work great. Try bleeding them and it still does. It's kind of, I probably should have reread it first. But it sounds like he's still having the same problem. No matter how much he pumps the pedal up or bleeds it, he still has some air. It seems like the pedal just goes right to the floor. So it's a common problem. If you want to get super scientific about it, if it's not a simple fix, like there's a leak or something like that, as brake fluid gets heated up, as you apply brake pressure and the pads heat up, all that from riding and stuff like that, the brake fluid itself, it operates off of a certain temperature that doesn't allow it to boil. That's why brake fluid is so crucial, and that's why you can't use water, because it has a certain boiling temperature for when it starts to break down and turn into gas, and that's what creates air in lines under extreme situations. Again, there's way more into it than just that, but that's like a surface level understanding. But I have seen it. The GL 1500s, I don't know who just commented that, but oh, never mind, that's completely different. That's what I get. That's what I get for trying to read comments and do this. The GL 1500s it's a very common problem for the 1500s as well, for the rear brake system. Whether that's what's happening, or there is an actual leak, or there's just air trapped somewhere that's hidden until it reveals itself and becomes a soft pedal. So what I would do, man, I have a brake bleeding video on my YouTube channel where I talk about using pliers as like a one-way valve. And it works great. Be careful not to over tighten or over crimp your hoses, because you can damage them if it's an old line or it already shows signs of dry rot on the exterior. I wouldn't use that method. But another good method would be to take your brake bleeder, so on your brake caliper, your rear brake caliper, and crack it open just enough for you to really have to force the pedal down to force the fluid out. Okay, just enough, and maybe a little bit more. But that almost creates a one-way valve in a way. That resistance that you have to push the fluid out of it will help bring all that air out. I think you still have air in the line. I don't think it's anything crazy, as long as you don't see any brake fluid leaking from any fittings or anything like that. So a vacuum bleeder works great as well. Again, with the plier technique, check out the video. I do it on a Nighthawk, but it's the same technique that you would use for any of that kind of stuff. Or just a straight up old car style where you pump, hold, break it loose, tighten it, release. Do that over and over and over again. So that's what I would do. I think you still have air in the line, honestly. Also, what you can do is which I've had to do a couple times when there's air trapped in the caliper, there's air trapped up in the master cylinder somewhere, is kind of back pressure the system. And the way you do that is, obviously you don't want your reservoir where you're filling the brake fluid out super full. You want it, kind of halfway to almost none. And if your bike's on the ground and not in the air or on a bench, take your knee, like the front of your knee, and put it up against that caliper and grab a hold of the fender or the seat or whatever you got, and kind of just use your knee to compress that caliper all the way in. And that will force air wherever it's trapped inside the caliper, or if it's more up front towards your pedal, that will force it out into the reservoir. And then try that and then bleed it again. So maybe do it 1 or 2 times, see if that works for you. But it's not uncommon. Alright, so great question, man. Let's see, we got Joel in Canada. He's got a Suzuki GS 1100. Alright, and the reason why I chose this because it's actually a great question. It pertains to winterization, because it's getting ready to be that time for a lot of people who don't necessarily want to ride in the cold, which is fine. So he said, "Hey man, thanks again for your great videos. You are certainly welcome, brother. Unfortunately, winter is coming, and I will have to store my bike for the good part of 6 months, which is a pretty common. Saw your video on tips for winterization, but I had a couple of questions. First, how much does location matter? I have a choice between a nearby dry covered area near the ocean I don't really like that idea, but in a distant finished garage. Does air exposure make a huge difference? Second, in terms of oil and other fluids, should I change them early on or leave them in and just wait, let the sediment to settle or whatever the case may be, and change them later on in the winter? Seems to be a variety of options out there. Thanks again. And there is a variety of options. So thanks, Joel, for bringing this up. This is an important topic if you want to save money on your bike repairs. So this conversation gets argued about all over the internet on how to do it, on what worked for somebody and if it worked for somebody else, and that doesn't work, and a bunch of people who say a bunch of stuff that probably shouldn't be saying a bunch of stuff, honestly. One way works for somebody, it may not work the same for somebody else. So when it pertains to your question, location, I don't think location does matter that much. When you made the comment about near the ocean, man, I wouldn't want to put it near the ocean. I put it as far away as possible, honestly, in a climate controlled garage or something like that. Something with a foundation to it, not just on the grass. Because as it rains and salt water gets up, how it evaporates and all that stuff, man, it can really do damage to the metal of your bike. So inside of a place would be crucial, I would think. But the process that I would take, which is what I try to tell a bunch of people, and it's kind of hard to tell someone this because there's a bunch of steps. So because this is recorded, a lot of guys can probably look back through this. I have a video on this as well. But if you have a metal tank in your bike, which I'm sure you do, fill the tank up full. Okay, so the more gas you have, the longer it takes for it to go bad. And what is helpful is to use fuel stabilizer. Seafoam, people will say Marble Mistral oil or whatever. Man, just get straight fuel stabilizer. It'll work great. So you can fill the tank up all the way full. That will prevent moisture from developing inside the tank on the warmer days and the colder days. Okay, and with the fuel stabilizer in it, it will help the fuel It will help the fuel keep its octane longer, because what ethanol does is it reduces the shelf life of gas. Fuel stabilizer tries to counteract that, okay, and kind of fights that happening. So it will prolong that life. And what I would do is right now, I would start running fuel stabilizer in with your gas as you ride it from day to day. That will start to work its way into the fuel line, into the fuel pump, fuel filters, the jets, floats, the tunnels inside the carb. All that stuff will start to get this, I would say, coating, but it's not really that substantial of a coating, but it helps. So it's not just like you poured fuel stabilizer in the tank, but you still got some gas that does not have that treatment in the fuel pump and lines. So start running it now. I would say 1 or 2 tanks of the recommended amount. More is not better, so don't think that. So that would be stage 1 of your winterization period, is getting all that stuff starting to work through the fuel system. I'm parched. So then when you go to actually store it, 6 months is a pretty long period of time. So what I would do is on your carburetors, you should have a drain on them. Here's a set of inline 4 carbs. Okay, you see right there on the very, very bottom, you should have a flathead screw. This has 4 of them, for all of them, okay? And it may be faced one direction and faced the other, but it would be the bottommost portion of your carb, depending on the year. 82. Yeah, so you should be able to drain it here, and then you'll have like a little nipple right there at the bottom, and it will probably come out of there, so you can put some rags up underneath there and soak it all up. About maybe 2 shot glasses of gas will come out. And so you want to drain all that out of each carb. I don't know if you have 4 or 2 on a GS 1100, but drain all that out, okay? Then what you want to do is start it up one more time with the gas off, not allowing any gas to flow to the carbs whatsoever, and that will suck anything that it can out of the main jet, and then also put the choke full on in the carb. Okay, that will suck everything out of the enrichment valve, suck everything out of the choke circuit, the slow speed circuit, all the tunnels that you use that circuit with the choke fully applied. The engine will try to start up one more time with whatever it's got in there. That would ensure everything is out of the jets as well, as good as you can. Okay, that's for long-term storage. That's what I would do. If you have the opportunity or the means of going out to the bike once or twice a month, you don't have to do any of that besides putting fuel stabilizer in your gas and firing the bike up. Let it warm up to operating temperature. Hopefully it's liquid cooled. If it is, then you can let it run till the fan comes on. That's a good time scale. If it's not liquid cooled, put a fan in front of it and run it, 5 minutes. Kind of give it some throttle, shut it back off. Once or twice a month would really be all you need, because you're getting that gas moving around, okay, and you're not allowing it to evaporate inside the bowls. That's the killer, is when gas starts to dry up. That's when it leaves behind that varnish in the carb. So, long answer to a really, really good question. So, there you go. So, third question. Thank you guys for hanging out. It's from Larry in Rhode Island. He's got a Honda CB400T2. 12,000 miles. It's bone stock. Okay, he says, the bike had apparently sat being neglected for quite a while before I bought it. Which means the carbs are probably toasted. While I've had great success rebuilding the carbs thanks to your channel, I've noticed that it's burning oil, but only after it's been warmed up, say 5 minutes on a countryside ride. There's no noticeable smoke on a cold start. The 12,000 on the engine doesn't seem like high mileage for this engine, and I was considering replacing the valve stem seals this winter. What are your thoughts? Could I have a problem with the rings? Thanks for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. You're very welcome. So, let me think. So, 78, okay, believe it or not, the regulations for motorcycles, as far as burning oil goes, or using up the oil that it has supplied, is every 1,000 miles, 1 quart of oil. Believe it or not, that's regulation. Of course, people want to all the companies hit way above that mark, but that's like standard. You have to not burn at least 1 quart of oil in 1,000 miles. And again, a lot of people don't. A lot of the companies no one's really building bad bikes nowadays. I don't care what company it is. So the efficiency level is obviously increased. But the old 70s bikes, my buddy has a Suzuki GS425E or something like that. And I've never seen a motor use as much oil. And this is motor number 2. Use as much oil as his does. It's not leaking out like you would think, but it's burning it. So, to your question, valve stem seals, you would typically notice a bad valve stem seal on the cold startups. So you were saying that you don't notice any smoke. There's no noticeable smoke on cold starts. So the valve stem seals is the last line of defense for oil after you've puddled oil up into the top of the valve head. Okay, the valve stem seal is to keep that oil from draining down into the cylinder. So a lot of times when valve stem seals go bad, you would notice cold startup smoke, an excessive amount of cold startup smoke because it leaks into the cylinder. Because the oil gets nice and hot, and that's that. Doesn't mean it can't leak during running condition. I'm not saying that, but normally for that kind of smoking, you would notice it right on startup. What I would do, man, is I would check to see. I would look into a leak down test. Okay, a leak down test tells you where the motor is holding the most amount of compression at top dead center. So I'm not going to get super into this, but because you have a compression test and you have a leak down. Leak down tests are usually meant for when you got no compression, or you have no compression. That'd be better English. When you have no compression and you're trying to find an issue. I would do a leak down test. You need a compressor for that. You need a special tool. You might be able to rent it from your auto parts store or whatever. Plugged into the spark plug cap. You turn the motor into top dead center compression where all the valves are closed. Nothing should be leaking past the rings, the valve seats, any of that stuff. And then you can force air into the system. You're going to need to hold the motor and at that position. You might need a friend or two. But that would tell you where's anything possibly escaping. Is it escaping past the rings? Are the rings the problem? Even though you have compression, it doesn't mean that you don't have less compression than what you should, which could be burning the oil. That would be what I would do. 12,000 miles is not a lot of miles for that motor to be burning oil, but using oil is not uncommon. That's why even today, checking your oil is one of the steps that every new owner should go through, because you need to be checking your oil because it gets used. I've seen on GL 1500s that come in from an 8,000 mile trip and they're missing almost a quart of oil. It's not leaking out anywhere, but it's just using it, which is not uncommon. So, of course, depending on how much and so on and so forth. But if you get it warm up and start revving it up, giving it some RPMs, look at the exhaust, see if you got any blue smoke. Maybe do it at night with a flashlight or a nice light kind of pointing toward the exhaust. You can see anything potentially coming out, blue smoke, anything like that. That might be a sure sign to say, hey, yeah, the rings are starting to go bad, and that would be the fix. But the valve stem seals, you can do it if you want, and honestly, they're probably dried up and hard and potentially causing the problem, but it's not what I would think right off the bat, okay? I'm long-winded tonight. I don't know what it is. Thank you guys for hanging out. Again, got like 26 people up in this jank. So, Greg, let's see what he's got. He's got a 2000, he's from Istanbul, but the bike's in Houston. Kawasaki KLR 650, 16,000 miles with a Super Tramp muffler. Super Tramp. I'm an idiot. Okay, so I took the bike on a 4,000 mile trip. It was a hot day, 92, but that's normal. I filled up with gas and rode about 10 miles. When I got off the bike, I noticed a hissing sound coming from the filler cap. I also noticed some seeping coming out of the keyhole. Excuse me. I opened the cap up and maybe a half a gallon of fuel erupted out of the tank. After the bike cooled, it was fine. 2 other times I noticed the hissing during the next 2 weeks. Thinking water, I did drain the carb. The problem did go away, but I'm doing an even longer trip this spring and want to prevent it from happening again. So what could cause this type of pressure to build in the tank, and how do I rectify it? I enjoy your channel and look forward to more episodes. Thanks. So you have yeah, that's what you got. You got a problem with the venting of the tank, and it can either build pressure or it can implode. Okay, so vacuum, as gas drains out of the tank, it creates a vacuum on the air side of that gas, and that can actually encave a tank. But you got pressures. But regardless, you might have just overfilled the gas tank. That's what I would think first, is you overfilled. So try not putting as much as you physically possibly can in the tank, and seeing if you ever had that problem again. If you do, which is actually, that's pretty unsafe for the gas to spew out at you when you open the thing up, but just building up pressure. But if you take a gas tank, we have metal gas tanks here that we fill up new bikes with. They're like 5-gallon tanks. And if I were to take the gas and just move it around and shake it, it builds up pressure in there, okay? I don't know on a chemistry level what's going on for that to happen. I'm not that smart. But if I pop the lid, it and releases that pressure. So the jostling of that gas tank being so full, that might have been what you experienced. It hissing might be the vent actually working properly. But you gotta see if on that tank, if it have an external vent line coming off the tank, or if it all vents through the gas cap. If it vents through the gas cap, potentially you might need a new gas cap seal, or just an all new gas cap. That would require a new key of course, but check that stuff out. You might have just overfilled it, or you have a venting problem. So, simple answer, great question though. That might be the answer. Yeah. So, we got 2 more questions. I'm gonna take a drink of water. You guys are doing good. It's good. It's good stuff. Lee from Georgia, his 94 Honda Magna 750. K&N air filter and Cobra open pipes, 22,000 miles. And he said, well, it ran fine until I decided to rejet the bike. And I used a jet calculator, and it said use 112s in the mains, and I used 110s, and stock is 102. But after I took the carbs off, I noticed the fuel pump was hooked backwards. So I hooked it up right. So then I put it all together and cranked the bike up. Idle's fine, but wouldn't rev up, so I took it all back apart again. Just finished putting it all back to stock, and still the same symptoms. Spitting back through the carbs, which is a rich symptom. That's just from me. Through the carbs and backfiring. Oh, sorry, I can't touch the mic. It makes a crazy noise. And on the 4 exhaust pipes, notice blue flames. But I'm at a standstill. I don't know what happened or what to try next. Now, you said that the bike ran fine until I decided to rejet it, and then you noticed that the fuel pump was hooked backwards. I mean, process of elimination. If you were to walk in here and tell me that, I would say you might want to recheck that fuel pump routing. Because if the bike ran fine until all that stuff was changed, and you only went into the bottom of the carb and checked and messed with the jetting, and then you went all the way back to the way it was, and it still was a problem. The only thing that you did not change was the fuel pump routing. So I would check that, man. Even though it may have looked right, or you used the book, just double check to make sure that that's how it should be routed. To me, it sounds like before you notice the fuel pumping hooked up backwards, you did swap it back. Lee, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us, bro. He did swap it back, so I imagine you still had the same problem. So, in other words, if that's the case, you already did swap it back. Let me see. Magna 750 94. Since you're here, does that have a vacuum operated fuel valve? That may be something that I would want to talk about if it does. Vacuum operated means it's not just one main fuel line. Wait, no, it's got a fuel pump. Does that have vacuum operated fuel valve? Alright, it does. So, I have a video on checking that out. You may be sucking in raw fuel into the port that goes into, which would cause it to be no fuel pump. What are you talking about? You said that you... I am severely confused now, because you said that the fuel pump was hooked backwards. So are you talking about what? You were wrong. Okay. Lee, we will get back to that, alright? I'm severely confused about what you did. So we will get back to your question, man. So we will move on to James, North Carolina, 1981 Honda CB650 Custom, 27,000 miles. He's got it's a mods or cafe racer. I like that. I like that title. When the carburetors are all separated, the butterflies moves freely. And then I put them back together without attaching the holding brackets, and they still move freely, but when I attach... Man, I need to work on reading. When the carburetors are all separated, the butterflies move freely, and then I'll put them back together without attaching the holding brackets. They'll still move freely, but when I attach the holding brackets, the butterflies get tough to move. I've tried everything from trying to change the alignment to smoothing the sides of the butterflies and chambers. I'm out of ideas. Is this on those carburetors? I imagine that if you went through them, you might have split the carburetors. And what I'm not sure about the CB650 is if those have to come, the butterfly rail has to come out. If the butterfly rail has to come out, and that's what you did, then it's still a misadjustment with the butterflies. Making sure they're all back into the exact same carb that they came out of is key. Not tightening them all down and making sure that it functions, and then once you get to kind of them all seat nice, tighten them back up very, very slowly and just keep checking that. I also had a 70s 750 that came in, and the vacuum piston on one of the carbs, when it was all tightened up and buttoned back up, the vacuum piston would not move freely. I thought it was like damage or scoring. It was warped, man. Someone had not had the carb seated against its plate all the way for a long period of time. After heating up and cooling down, it warped the carb itself. So I guess my question would be, did it move freely before you got into the carbs? Because if it was moving freely, then the problem is still from you taking them all apart, bottom line. Removing material to make them sit flush is not a good idea, honestly, man, because you shouldn't have to do that. So leaving everything pretty much loose as far as the throttle butterfly plates go is key. One tip also is when you have them all tightened down and they're all nice and operating freely, on the back side of the screw, you need to peen that screw, okay? Because they should have like a little like cutout in them. You need to hit it with like a punch, very softly, kind of spread those threads out a little bit so they don't come out. Because if they come out, cool, my battery's dying. If they come out, then your motor would probably be toast, because it will suck that bolt straight into the intake and bounce around the piston a couple times until it wedges itself between the skirt. So it sounds like you just got some finagling to do with those butterflies and how they all sit. Okay, so that's that. So Lee, back to your question, man. If you could send me another email, I was wrong. I thought the auto fuel valve was a fuel pump. Okay. When you say auto fuel valve, I imagine that you are talking about a vacuum operated fuel valve that has the vacuum line going into somewhere where it sucks vacuum to allow okay. So I would check to see if you have any gas coming out of there. If that diaphragm is bad inside that vacuum operated fuel valve, you can suck raw fuel in. To make this quick, your jetting, if you use like aftermarket main jet needles, I would go back to the stock ones. If you, when you pull the main jets off, if you took the emulsion tubes out, there's a main jet needle seat that needs to be on all of them, that kind of hangs out through the bore. I would check that. I would check float height if that is adjustable. I would check, let's see. Obviously, you've had the carbs off a couple times, so I can't say a loose jet. But I did pull one carb out of formation. So, man, I would think that you might need to look into doing like a bench sync with the carbs, to make sure that they are all. Because if you took a carb off of the assembly, something might not be right there. Like as pertains, man, like that. I'm trying to imagine what those carbs look like, honestly, and I'm having trouble digging it up in my brain. So I want to say there are 4 carbs, one per cylinder. So because it is a Magna. So carb sync, if your carb sync is way off and you have the springs in wrong, how they all connect and and that's off, then you could be holding butterflies open and not closing them all sequentially. Taking just one off and putting it back on correctly may be the issue of how that all joins back together with the springs and the washers and how that all connects. Those are such a pain in the butt carbs to work on. I'm sorry you're having issues with them, but I think send me another email with a little bit more detail, maybe some pictures of how you have them set up, maybe even a video of how it's running. But it sounds like it's extremely rich. Okay, so backfiring out of the carb is typically always a rich situation. So checking the sink, making sure that if you are at stock jetting, I would still lean right back into the way that they're synced, where your mixtures are set at. Something's too rich, man, for it to be puking out gas like that and not being used. So this conversation makes me not want to ever touch my carbs. Oh, Juanita, yeah. Yours are not as sophisticated, sophisticated is the wrong term, but the V4s, man, they are a fun time getting them all right. If it's the first time you've been in there, the dual carbs is way simpler. But so that's it, man. 5 or 6 questions. All I'm gonna go over. If your question did not get answered, and you sent me an email, it'll probably be on the next one. I just don't want to crush too much time, and my phone's actually dying. But I'm gonna try to hit up a couple questions here before it dies, and as soon as I get like the 10% notification, then I'll wrap it up. All right, so from the top, let's see what we got. We got a lot of conversation going on. Thanks, Mitch. Don't stress yourself over this. Thanks, dude. I try not to. Mondays just suck, man. Monday is Monday all day long. That's what I don't like about it. I'm always tired. I stayed up till like 2 a.m. watching Stranger Things when I knew I shouldn't have. But you can't help it with how they rope you into that junk. You make me want to go to MMI. Dude, Lee, MMI is a great school, man. You learn a lot. Happy Halloween, George. Alright, from Rashi. My name is Rashi. What's up, Rashi? How can you determine if you have a single or double ignition coil on a Vulcan Nomad? You probably have 2 coils on that. You would tell because you have 1 coil wire, spark plug wire coming from 1 coil. If it's double, then you have 2 spark plug wires coming from 1 coil, if that's what you mean. It probably has 2, is what I would imagine. Maybe 2 spark plugs. Yeah. So that's how you would tell. Chris, I'm in 68 Triumph with a 61 T5 engine and cannot figure out what the previous owner did with the wiring. Dude, I honestly, man, I probably would not be much help. I know this much about the 68 Triumph with a 61 T5 engine. If I had a wiring schematic that was like factory wire schematic, then I might be able to be more helpful. But just sending pictures, man, I would be just as lost as you are. I don't know what kind of wiring colors they use, how they used them. All I know is really Honda schematics off the top of my head with what color wires go to what. But if you want to do that, we might be able to set up some kind of live Skype session, and where I can really spend a lot of time with you one-on-one. If you want to do that, shoot me an email. Let's see what we got. Anything else? Silence. I don't think I got any more questions. No, I don't see any. Roland said, just wanted to say thank you for your suggestion for correcting my tweaked forks. Worked perfectly. Awesome, man. Nothing like just hitting it up against something solid, you know? I think that's what we talked about last. Simplex, thanks Cody, I'll do a leak down test and see what the results I get. Then I'll just ride the bike because it's normal for it to smoke. Got the shirt today too, thanks. Yeah man, just keep oil in it. Keep on riding it. She's old and worn out, but she'll keep running. Inky Print said, I'm running an 89 Yamaha RZ350. I pulled the carbs off 6 times. I know them like the back of my hand now. Thanks for all you do, bud. You're really helped me out along the way. Dude, you're certainly welcome, man. More power to you for 6 times off the bike. It's a great way to learn how to do something. So that's it, man. I don't see any other questions here. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions about your Honda, preferably, I try to send out help to all the other guys too, because help is always wanted. But thank you guys for spending the time with me. 40 minutes is usually where I like to wrap it up at. But shirts are on sale. Check out the site, support me that way. It helps me get cool gear like wireless mics, lighting, hopefully a cool camera one day. And yeah, so I'm working on another video with wiring, actually. It's a long video, it's a long YouTube video, and it's a lot of editing. But it's how to use a test light, easily to diagnose problems. So I'm really excited to get that out to you guys. I did it on a Nighthawk that had, how to check the aftermarket, how to wire up aftermarket turn signals, and diagnose a no headlight problem also in that video. It's really, really cool because it happened on the spot. So no better way to do that. So again, thank you guys for hanging out. If you have a question, go to the website, MotorcycleMD.com, hit up the Ask MD live Q&A drop down and fill out a question. You never know if it will get answered on here. Try to bring value to everybody by doing this. Until then, if you don't see my video come out this week, make sure you subscribe to my email list. Hit me up on Instagram, Facebook at themotorcycleMD. And I'll see you guys next Monday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Cody from MotorcycleMD. I'm going to go home and watch another episode or 5 of Stranger Things. I'm pumped. I'm a nerd, but I'm pumped. Later.